talk through the geotechnical self-audit, but I'll give you an introduction to that and QNJAC more generally first. I'll just share my screen. I have a presentation here. Excellent. So hopefully everyone can see that. Yes, I'm here today to talk about the self-audit particularly. And the presentation today is relatively short and fairly straightforward. The idea is this will give you an indication of what the audit is, and I'd be happy to answer more questions about this when we meet, as Sam said, later in February. So firstly, just a little bit about myself. Rob Palmer, Head of Technical Services for Tarmac. So we have a team of geologists, geotechnical specialists and land surveyors. And yeah, I'm a chartered geologist and manager. I've got experience in exploration, design and operational management of quarries. I'm also very proud to be the chair currently of the QNJAC Geotechnical Subgroup. And I'm also co-opted into the Pan-European Reserves Council, PERC. So that's just a bit about me. Yeah, I'll happily talk to everyone about that and any of the details around QNJAC more when we meet. So we'll move on to the content of the talk. So firstly, a little introduction. QNJAC ENT or Geotechnical Subgroup is one of a number of subgroups under QNJAC. It comprises about 30 people that engage with the group on a monthly basis. We have meetings. Those people tend to come from industry, but also trade bodies, specialist consultancies, and regulators. And that composition of the group really reflects the kind of tripartite nature of QNJAC, where it provides a forum where people from industry, trade bodies, and regulators can all come together to discuss safety matters for our industry. Geotechnics, excavations and tips is one area that I'm particularly passionate about. It's very relevant to what I do as a geologist, and obviously my day-to-day role includes a lot of that. The whole purpose of QNJAC and at the subgroup, as far as I see it at the moment, is around engagement opportunities, whether that be CPD activities like this, or production of guidance. We have, as the subgroup over the years, under various other chairs as well, produced a lot of guidance, around over 17 pieces. The background behind me shows an extract from the website, which is due to be updated actually, but you can go on that website and you can get all that guidance free of charge as well. We try to tailor it to suit what we see as some of the key themes or requirements out there within the industry. And if there is anything that you have particular need for questions around, then as a group, we're very keen to hear from people. Access to that group is completely open should anyone want to join us. We get into some quite interesting conversations around a wide range of factors, all under the heading of excavation and tips. The geotechnical audit, if it's possible to have a favourite piece of guidance, I'd say this is currently one of my favourites, because it ties together a lot of geotechnical factors and provides a bit of kind of self-help that you can go to, and it'll lead you down a kind of path of questions as a kind of a guide next to you if you go through this for your specific site. So yeah, it came out last year. It was a soft launch through various Institute of Quarrying presentations that people in the committee supported, and the feedback generally has been good. I think it's still at the process of being used, and as more and more people use it, we'll find out how it's going. Just to say a quick shout out for more guidance that's coming soon. We're looking at something around the content of a geotechnical assessment, and also an emergency checklist where you could, if you were to have a geotechnical related incident on your site, how you could follow some type of flow chart. So that's something we see as some practical, useful guidance that you could use. And just to be clear, what we are presenting is guidance. It isn't mandatory. but we are trying to provide information that will just help and support your compliance more generally with the quarries regulations. And as I said, it's not mandatory, and this self-audit, if you were to look at it, have a go at it, it isn't a time-bound thing that you must do, but hopefully just a useful tool. So yeah, just a bit of detail there. I'll go into the content of the audit in more detail here. So just to reiterate what I said, this is an extract from a guidance note that comes with the audit form to provide a structured framework to enable organisations to carry out self-audits of geotechnical procedures to prove their effectiveness and identify weaknesses that could lead to serious injury or loss of life. And it's important that we always bear that in mind. The reason why we're doing this is very much to look after ourselves and others and maintain safe and also effective operations. Findings from the audit should be recorded and used to write an action plan. So, it's supposed to be a practical tool that you can develop from and progressively develop from. It's not exclusive to the extractive industries. Excavations and tips can occur anywhere, and particularly when I say tips, or use different term for them, stockpiles, you can apply that to other material handling facilities. I'm thinking asphalt plants, wharfs and things like that. It's important you allow sufficient time to do this audit, and it's not a tick box exercise. It could be, but then you wouldn't get the value from it. It needs to be seen as an ongoing process, and the purpose is to uncover weaknesses and improve systems on site. It's good if you can involve the workforce in this. You help get a much broader picture of what's happening on the sites. It also helps contribute to that workforce engagement with safety in quite a specific area here. Involve contractors, particularly if you have people working at contractors working at the quarry faces, or conducting muck shift operations, constructing tips, etc. Very good to engage with them on this. And it says there to sign and date the audit. This just helps ensure that we get a progression on things. So you've got something, if you've gone to the time to do this, you have got something you can refer back to, should you want to, as a way of having made an improvement on your site. Or, if you want to use this as a bit of a tool to actually get some traction with some improvements you want to make on your site, then probably a very good way is to use some self-audit like this to do that. So this is the audit format. As it stands, this is a downloadable form that you can complete, but I do understand from the Institute of Quarry, we're going to have some support in producing this as a more of an interactive PDF, which will be available soon. So you'll have different formats if you prefer. Word format's very straightforward to download, obviously, and make your own, but you could print it off. This is a section from the general sections part, and you can see the first question: is there an appointed geotechnical specialist for the quarry? Good, fairly straightforward question, hopefully a fairly straightforward answer. If you look at that question or any of these questions and think, right, okay, what does that actually mean, or how does that relate to the regulations, then you can see the respective regulation in bold there in the brackets. So you can go to regulation Reg 33 and see what that means. The idea is the questions are in some ways a little bit repetitive. They are intentionally trying to tease questions or answers out of you, make you think about some of these things. You see there, question 2, have all excavations, tips and stockpiles been subject to a geotechnical appraisal by a competent person? So again, quite a broad question there. You may not be able to just instantly just tick a yes or no, but you could put a comment in there just to say, we need to have a look at that. So I'm not going to go through obviously every question in here, but for each of the sections, I will pick out some of the main topics. So for instance, in the general questions section, which we've already started to look at, you can see the first two there are around specialist and doing appraisals. And again, don't worry if some of this terminology, Reg 32, Reg 33, GA, etc., is new to you. That's something we can discuss further on the or you can see, as I said, you can see reference to this in the regs. But conclusions of GA is geotechnical assessment. An approved design. So these are the type of questions that they're going to ask you about excavations, tip rules, frequency of inspections as per the geotechnical assessment. So quite a good strong start there. And if you're answering yes to a lot of these questions straight off, and you're familiar with what this is referring to, then you're in a fairly strong place already. If you're not, then that's something, again, it's hopefully going to drive some change and something to focus on. And there's always someone to assist with that. Obviously, consultants are obviously more than willing to engage with this, but the QNJAC guidance more generally on the website, as I say on this screenshot behind me, will help you with some of the detail there. So a few more questions, and I will apologise now. The format of this presentation is fairly benign; it just goes through like this. But the purpose is just to give you this flavour of the audit tool. So more questions there. Looking forward now to new features planned for the next 1 or 2 years, and any changes, any unexpected occurrences. Risk assessments in place. This is often something that can need a bit of focus. If you've got excavation and tip rules for a quarry operation, how do your risk assessments effectively interlink with those and look at the hazards specifically for your site? And good question below, are the workforce aware of significant hazards? So significant hazards is a prescriptive term used in the quarries regulations for specific features. Do the people engaging with those features on site know about them and aware? Review of health and safety measures, any engineered rockfall measures. So yeah, again, some good kind of leading or probing questions there. So we'll move on now to be a bit more specific. We're going to look at excavations and faces. So in this section here, it's asking, have you a design for your excavations and faces? Now, the quarries regulations are quite explicit about the need for this. So that's why it's really at the top of the questions here. You have detail around slope angles, bench levels, widths and standoffs as well, slope stability analysis. And more, we're getting into more detail now around discontinuity surveys. This is quite a lot more technical information that you would find within your geotechnical assessment if you have or need one. Are there recommendations in your geotechnical assessment? And are you aware of what they are? Are they being addressed? Rockfall, there's questions around that, and also weather-related instability. I think this is quite an interesting one, particularly with the weather events that we're having more and more these days. That's something to bear in mind. I often, when I think of weather, first thing I think about is water, heavy rainfall, and that can cause stability issues, as can freeze thaw, as I'm sure people will know either from training or from actual experience. Discussion around third-party equipment there, that's a good question, as is fencing and signage. There are obviously separate regulations around that, and I know there's various risk assessments you can do to look at the boundary of your sites, but this is obviously very relevant when it comes to safeguarding people from excavations and tips as well. So we'll move on to lagoons. Lagoons is in some ways very similar if in terms of the types of questions that you're going to be asked in this section of the audit, but just focusing on a few others that have come in here, like life-preserving equipment, freeboard design. That's the height difference between the water levels and the margins of the lagoon. Defects, blockages, seepages, all things quite specific to lagoons. Now, I'm conscious that I'm talking here to the London and Home Counties group, and I think, you know, what do you face with some of your sites in sand and gravel predominantly, and the fast-moving dynamic nature of those, and the requirement for lagoons. I think this presents a series of challenges in this part of the world that is needs a fair bit of focus. And often I think some of the geotechnical stuff that is discussed is more generically around or leaning towards hard rock, but I think the challenges that you have are particular and require quite a focus on geotechnics. So just a shout out really to anyone that does want to develop their geotechnical competence, that it's an important area, and not to be neglected when people start talking about hard rock. They need to be reminded it's equally important to sand and gravel. So yeah, lagoons are a particular area of focus. Excellent. So tips and stockpiles, tips stroke stockpiles, there's no real distinction there between either. These do need, again, as much focus as any others, excavations or lagoons, and particularly when you think about stockpile management there that's referenced, where you will have your people on sites and potentially members of the public and customers engaging in these areas with those materials. It does need a focus, and ensuring that is managed. Again, that dynamic situation, stockpiles getting very large, getting very small, potentially overhanging. Recording substances tipped, that's important to understand what that material is made of, that tip, both from stability, but potentially also from future kind of quality control or compliance monitoring. Signage of all stockpiles. So again, a few areas there that will cross into other types of audits that you may have on your sites, and other QA work that you'll be doing. It all falls into kind of good practice here for geotechnical management as well. So I'll move on and onto the next slide, which is geotechnical management. So this is quite an important one here, or a very important one here. It's asking some questions that superficially might seem like an obvious answer, but it's one that it is important to ask yourself, and particularly if you are in a position of responsibility on a quarry site. Who is the operator under the quarry regs? And I'll leave that as an open question there for you. Who do you think is the operator for your site as far as the regs are concerned? Who is the competent person, individual in charge? The 81C appointee, for instance, or the 81D appointee. And who's competent to carry out appraisals? In this case, Regulation 32 appraisals. And then looking more widely at this, have you got, and who is the appointed geotechnical specialist? And I mentioned earlier, we will be looking at issuing more guidance as QNJAC around the content of geotechnical assessments and other things like that. So you can, if you are in a position of responsibility there, you can look more critically at those geotechnical assessments that you are receiving from specialists. So yes, is the geotechnical assessment clear and concise? Is the geotechnical assessment reviewed readily? Is all design info readily available? So you may pay for a report to be done, but is that report suitable for use and clear to you or the people engaging with it? And hopefully it is, and you can find the information you need. Here, one of the main things will be around the design parameters that you need to work to. And excavation and tip rules reviewed and amended, and are they relevant? So it's looking at the kind of quality of the documentation around that, And obviously that documentation needs to align with the findings of the geotechnical assessment and with any site-specific risk assessments that you have. Yes, Reg 32, appraisal for every hazard on site, and then something there at the bottom, notification of hazards to the HSE. So there's a requirement to notify significant hazards accordingly to the HSE. Again, the question in itself will relate back to the specific regulation that applies to if you need some guidance on that. So we'll go on to the next slide, inspections and training. So yeah, we've only got a couple more slides left on this, and inspections and training. Have all hazards been explained to personnel? Are all people responsible for inspections adequately trained, and are they competent? And I think, you know, this is key really, because you know it's the inspections and it's the maintenance of those and monitoring of any change that really can help when it comes to controlling any geotechnical risks, or precursor events to any larger failures or problems that you may be having on site. Do all persons making physical changes to the quarry understand the design parameters and control measures? That's a good question. Now, there's ways of communicating that through the obviously risk assessments we've mentioned, through excavation and tip walls, but also, you know, there's the opportunity to do toolbox talks with those individuals, possibly provide job cards or illustrative ways of condensing this information into something that's actually meaningful and relevant to them. That's quite a good question. Is there significant time and resource for inspections? I mentioned about this self-audit not becoming a kind of tick box style exercise, and obviously the same would apply for geotechnical inspections on a site, that there's a quality to them that makes them reasonable. And is there evidence of training? So, you know, these are questions that we are trying to ask through the self-audit, that, you know, if you can answer those for yourself, because you're going to be in a very good, strong position to develop your own geotechnical systems in-house and procedures, but also, you know, if you are asked these type of questions by an inspector or anyone more generally, you're going to have this type of information to hand and just hopefully a useful aid memoir of the kind of information you need to keep. So just in conclusion on that, we'd recommend that any actions that you identify from this, given some time scales for completion, I mean, that's just fairly standard, isn't it, to say that, because obviously we want people to find actions from this and make improvements for themselves. Any actions are given a person responsible to actually get them done, and the idea is you'd recheck this self-audit periodically to see if the actions have been completed. And yeah, down at the bottom there, finding weakness and improving procedures and practices is the result of a successful audit. So, you know, the whole point is you're going to find actions here. So I wouldn't say, you know, don't try and do this audit and say, great, I haven't come out with any actions. You know, the point will be, in some respects, you know, the more actions you've got, the better. If it's well organized and then shared to the respective people to do in a timely manner, that's a really good place to get to. A reminder then with regard to where to get some of this information. You've got the QNJAC website that, as I said, is soon to be revised. You've also got safequarry.com. The QNJAC app, that's currently actually been put down whilst they revise the QNJAC logos, the website and everything else, but I'm sure that will come back. But yeah, in the meantime, go to the website. And then finally, just a reminder, as Sam said at the beginning, they have the event coming up on the 22nd of February. The QR code is there, should you want the link for it. And I look forward to seeing those that can make it. I'll be there, hopefully, along with Steve and others, to meet you face to face. So thanks for listening, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Take care. Bye.